Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. I got a question the other day on a subject that I haven't done a video on yet, so that's what this one is going to be about. And that question was, how do I go about mocking up various parts and just to kind of see what direction the model is going? And that's a very good question. All of us have to mock up something at some point in time. So on my truck kits, or just about anything else that I do, mainly the trucks, there's a lot of mock-up just to kind of get an idea of what the overall project's going to look like, and as far as length and height and width and things like that. So as you can see, we have the California hauler sitting here that I'm working on. And I'm going to break this thing down, and then I'll go through and kind of give you an idea of how I set things up. And it's really a pretty simple process, but we'll go ahead and break it down now, and then we'll reassemble it, and I'll kind of show you some of the things that I use to mock up this certain, what you see right here. So first we're just going to go ahead and take the load off the trailer, and we're going to slide the trailer tires out of the way here. And then of course we'll set the trailer off to the side. And we'll go ahead and flip the hood forward here. Take the cab off. And get the front tire out of the way and the rear tires out of the way. And I'll pull this pin out of the hood. And we'll set it over to the side. And what we're back to now is basically what the chassis is sitting on. And how I go about doing that is the first step that I always do when I start a new project, especially a truck build, is I will take my little square, and of course it has inches going up this way, so you can measure up to 7 inches, and I will take the tire and wheel assembly that I'm going to be using on the truck build, and I will measure from the table, from the bottom of the tire, up to the roughly the center of the tire. And on this particular model here, to the center, from the ground to the center of the tire is roughly about 11/16 of an inch. Okay, and that's a measurement that I kind of just record in my head just to let me know that, basically the center of this tire is 11/16 from the ground to the center of this hub point here. So that's for the front tire. And then you'll move on to, like on this one, this would be the rear tires. And these are a little bit taller as far as the diameter over the front tires. And this one is right between 11/16 and 7/8. And, that's another measurement that I will record. Now, the reason why I record that measurement is with me knowing what those heights are for those tires, I can set my chassis, once I get certain things on it, I can kind of set it up to that height. So the first thing that I would do along the way is after I have my rails built and have the cross members in, I'll find something like these tires that I have sitting here, and I'll keep stacking components up. And just to give you an idea of how I go about doing that, I will stack up various things. Like you'll see a tire here, and then we got a piece of what is that? That's 40 thousandths plastic. And then a piece of this 1/16 wooden strip. And I'll just kind of slide that kind of stuff over there so I can get a good measurement on it with it sitting on the table. And then I will measure to the top of that. And if it's in the neighborhood of what I'm looking for, as far as the height, I know that that's going to be my spindle height in relation to these tires. So to make it pretty simple, as far as mocking up for that, what I found was this one tire here, which is actually one of the tires I'm going to be using on the back of the truck. And this one piece of plastic, and this wider float tire that I have here. Once I got the rear end and the I-beam in, I found out that this was the height that I needed to be at the center, or roughly in the center of this tire. So that's what I keep for a mock-up during the build stages and adding parts and things like that to the model. Now, as far as things like you see the fifth wheel here, that is parts that I put together, you know, off of the model as an assembly and then kind of put them into place. And if I need to take them back off the model, a lot of times what I'll use is the Micro Crystal Clear. And I'll just use a couple drops of that on there and just to hold something in place. And what else do we have? You know, mocking up the hood assembly. You can see the piece of tape going across the front of it there. That's actually holding the grill in. The grill is not glued into this. I don't use a lot of glue when I'm mocking up, but I use the tape on this, and that's how I set my hood hinges and all that stuff. And the other thing that I came up with on this one is this is actually an axle out of an AMT truck kit. And the parts that I used on here for my hood pivots, I checked to see if this pin would go through them, and it does slide right through from side to side. So with that, I just go ahead and set my hood into place with its pivots and slide the pin through. And just leave it long like this, because the neat thing about that is you can pull that pin out at any time and take the hood off, and you don't have to use the actual kit parts that a lot of times once they're in place, they're in place. But if you try to use the kit parts sometimes, you will find out unless you glue them, you'll get a lot of play in your, you know, side to side in your parts, and you don't want that. So I kind of mock everything up this way here. And then simple thing of like moving on to the engine. Of course, this engine was swapped into this model, and this is a Revell of Germany engine, and the mounts are totally different, and you know, going into an AMT frame. So what I did do is I had the AMT cross member in the front of this truck, and I had it all mocked up with that. Well, when I decided to put the Revell of Germany engine in, I cut the front cross member out and measured from side to side inside the frame rails on what I needed. And actually, I measured it before I cut the kit rail out of there, or the kit cross member. And I measured from inside of the frame rail to the inside of the frame rail, and I cut my Revell of Germany front motor mount and radiator mount to that dimension. Then I cut out the original kit piece that I had in there, and then I glued in the Revell of Germany part. And then I just moved on to modifying the little ears on the back of the transmission to get the engine to set in where I wanted it. Now, the other thing that goes along with that you also have to check is the height of the hood, or the engine in relation to the hood. And also another thing is the radiator assembly. That's something else that has to be checked. And I've got that sitting right over here. Actually, I put it in the vise last night because I had a little bit of a fit problem. But what I did is I went ahead and took the radiator, and as you can see, I'm just sitting the radiator into place. It's not glued. It's just sitting in there, you know, all by itself, and roughly in the position that it's going to be. And if you do a lot of dry fitting on your parts and make sure everything, you know, is fitted properly, a lot of times things will just kind of stand up on their own. And, you know, with that in place, that gives me a chance to check and make sure if the hood will close or not. And the next thing that we have is the cab. And you'll see these pieces of tape I have here and right here. What that's doing is holding the scratch-built floor pan that I put into place and cut for this cab. It's holding it up into position, exactly where it's going to be when it's glued in. And the other thing that I did was I glued two small risers here. And how I got the height of these is the kit floor pan. I measured the risers that's on those, and I found a piece of plastic that was the same size. Or if you can't find something the same size, go ahead and sand it down, or, you know, whatever, but make it the same dimension. And then I just put 2 spots of the Micro Crystal Clear underneath of the cab floor and stuck these into place. Now what they do is they actually space the cab up off of the frame, and just like that there, that gives you your cab spacing off of the frame. And the reason why I kept that the same dimension as the kit piece was my hood needed to line up with everything also. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm just sitting the cab and the hood together, just like that. And as you can see, there's no glue or anything in there. And another little mock-up I do is, let me grab a bottle of paint here that I had. There it is, up here. And I'll just take a bottle of paint or something like that. You can do tires or whatever. And that allows me to tilt the hood forward to roughly where it's going to be in the show position when it's on a show table. And the cab is just sitting into place right now. We know where that's at. And if you need to do anything around the cab, make sure that once you have this hood and cab assembly lined up, that you put that back together just like that. And then you can do any fitting as far as like the stack elbows or something like that. And you know that the cab is in the exact position it needs to be in as far as, you know, where your elbows would be or where your steering linkage would be or something like that. And if you need to move any of this out of the way, you can take a piece of tape and run across this cowl point right here, half of it onto the cowl, half of it onto the hood. And when you do it that way, you can actually take the whole cab and hood and tilt it forward. And that helps out a lot with, you know, various mock-up things. And what else do we have? That pretty much does it on the cab. Like I say, if you need something to just sit into place for, you know, temporarily, just use a little drop of Crystal Clear or even Elmer's white glue. It does take a little bit longer to set, but, you know, it's well worth it because it's easy to get back apart and it'll roll right off with your finger once it's dry. I do not recommend using super glue on parts. It's a little bit too strong to, you know, be putting parts together like that, and plus it can be tricky to get it back off, so I do not recommend the super glue trick. But as far as the mock-up, you know, with what we have right there, most of the stuff that you see is not glued, and you know, like on the tires, I'll go ahead and set them into place. And what I'm doing is I'm looking back at the I-beam, and once I do that, it tells me where the tire needs to be in relationship to the I-beam and also in relationship to the front fenders. And if the tire wants to roll like it always does on me, you can take a little piece of plastic or a wood stick and set right in front of it. And if it tends to want to roll backward, you can put another one back here just to kind of hold that tire right where you want it. So that's how we go about doing that. And the same process with the rear tires. Right now, none of this is glued together. I have the hub, which is here, and you can see the hollow part of the wheel there. And what I do is, since these parts are going together anyway, and they're cast pretty well, and we got a friction fit, I can go ahead and slide the hub through just a little bit, just so it stays put. Make sure it's centered in there, pretty much like it's going to be on the finished model. And you'll notice that the hub sticks out a little bit in the back. I leave that sticking out because then I can take the inner wheel and sit over top of that. And now with no glue or anything, I can take that assembly and set it into place on the table and line it up with the rear end where it's going to be on the finished model. And that tells me what my wheelbase is going to be. And let's see, now we move on. Since we've got all that kind of mocked up and in position, we move on to the trailer. And I did the same technique on the trailer. I figured out what the distance was from the center of my hub to the bottom of my tires. And once I mocked this front, or the axle for the trailer into place, and all I did was just sit that up on the pins. And this is another thing, you know, when it comes to dry fitting a model, this is what we're talking about. You know, when your parts and everything line up the way they should, you can see that's just sitting in there and it stays put. So then what I do is just go ahead and find something that I can prop up under the trailer. And in this case, what it ended up being was two of these trailer tires here and a piece of 1/16 basswood. And when I set it on the kingpin, or on the fifth wheel, and line up the kingpin, the bottom of the frame rails are actually sitting where my measurement from the center of my tires to the center of the spindle on the trailer is at the right height. So then I just take my tires and I can slide them into position, lined up with the axle. Tells me right where I need to be. Now in this one, I don't have an axle here at the back, so I just go ahead and slide that tire in and line it up as close as I can to where the axle is going to be, and then that gives me my distance on my in between on my tires on the trailer. And other than that, that's about it as far as mocking up. Like I say, I use a little bit of crystal clear, I use a little bit of tape, I use a lot of dry fitting the parts to make sure everything fits the way I want it to, and it's tight, so when I put it together, it's actually pretty much a press fit. And that's kind of, you know, for the most part, that's all there is to it. You got to be a little bit creative sometimes. You know, you have like Tamiya paint bottles that if you need something spaced, you can set it up on top of the paint bottle, and if it has any length to it, you can take 2 bottles and set them like that and set it on top of it. That way you know it's level. And you know, just various things. I use tires, I'll use wheels, I will use you know, of course we have different heights on the bottles. Like this is a flat finish from Floquil, and this is a Model Master. You can see the height difference in the bottle there. You can set that bottle down, and if you need to know, just measure to the top of it, and that'll tell you what, you know, what the height is from the bottom to the top of here, so that you can figure that into whatever you're trying to mock up as far as the model. So hopefully that answers Fordman 1956's question, is the person that asked me the original question on that. And but like I say, most of it is just dry fitting and making sure your parts fit the way they should. And once you've got it at that stage, everything seems to, you know, stay put and, you know, mock up pretty well. Now, you know, this is something that you don't want to be aggressive with, and you know, you don't want to be doing a lot of work to it, because it takes nothing to, you know, knock the cab out of position. It takes nothing to knock a tire over, or, you know, even bumping it a little bit slides that around. And you know, the trailer tires will move around front to back on you. So you just gotta be careful with all that, and just be, you know, very light-handed when you're mocking things up. But other than that, that's about all there is to it. So if you have any questions or concerns on this video, just let me know, and I'll be more than glad to answer them for you. And like always, I thank you for watching and supporting Showtime Studios, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.